Welcome to Life Workshop, where we discuss the forgotten basic, or I better say, I discuss the forgotten basics today. I'm going to be doing this podcast by myself today, and it is in regards to, as you know about from the topic, I'm suing my bank. But why am I doing that? Um, I some time ago I ended up buying a house in Dubai, and then I have been making some transactions, basically to for the purchased house. And this has been going on for the past 3 years. And I have made six payments through the same bank. And then for the seventh time, when I wanted to do the same thing, they started asking some extra questions that it just didn't make sense. To be honest, the first six times, again, I explained it that, look, this is going to go on for 6 years. I'm going to be paying the same amount every year twice. And, can we somehow, not to ask the same question? But it was not possible. So, anyways, the seventh time, they started asking some other, some silly questions. And they were concerned about me being frauded, which when they called me, I said, you know what? No, I am not being frauded. I have been sending money to these people and it is legit. Then the question was, have you seen the house getting built? I said, well, yes, on Google Map, I have checked and it is. It is government of Dubai who is the construction company and they are more than reliable. Then who was your realtor? I said, why do you want to buy a house from them? No, just to make sure. I said, it just doesn't make sense. But yet I went ahead and gave the name of the realtor. Then the question was again, have you been threatened? I said, no, I have not been threatened. And this basically, the whole conversation getting recorded. You can be assured that even if I get scammed or something, you know what, I'm okay with that. It's not the bank's responsibility. Thank for your concern. So anyway, after all this, the guy said, you know what? Okay, I'm okay. I'm going to release the money, which is basically my own money that is going to be released to an exchange office, which their office head office is in London, England, and then they would exchange it to United Arab Emirates dirham and send it to them. But didn't happen, didn't happen. And the day after, I got another call. This time, another lady is calling. I said, why are you calling me? And I was in a rush. I had told them that, look, I'm running short of time. This money should be sent there on time. Otherwise, there are penalties. And, it just it should not happen. But no, she calls that, it is for your own security. I said, my own security? Anyways, so what's the question? The question is, how did you get this money to this account? I said, seriously? Don't you see you have access to my bank account? What do you see there? Then she said, well, there was a check deposited. I said, so whose check was that? Yourself. I said, from where was it? Another bank. I said, so make a random guess. What did I do? Well, probably transferred money from your other account in the other bank to this one. I said, yes, you got that right. So what's the question? Well, why didn't you send it through that bank? I said, I made a mistake. I'm sorry. I said, seriously? I have been sending that through you guys for the past 3 years, six times. I thought it's easier to do the same. And then her next question was, how did you get that money into other bank? I said, seriously? I said, you know what? I stole the money. I robbed that bank. I frauded them. What does it have to do with you? Are you trying to save them? And if you're concerned, you should call the police, not me. You have the money in your possession, send the damn money. And then, of course, this had taken, I made the story a little bit short. They had asked a lot of other questions prior to this. And it became really frustrating. I said, you know what, I'm really disappointed. I would like to make a formal complaint. And then on top of that, she asked that, no, she would like to have my e-statement from the other bank. I said, why do you need my e-statement? You have the money. The check has been cashed. And there is a 5-day hold that has gone by, and you have the money. But no, she wanted my e-statement. I said, okay. I even provided the e-statement the day after. But yet the money was not sent. And then 2 days after, I'm talking 2 business days, I get a call from somebody who basically was addressing the complaint. And they said, what is going on? Why are they asking so many unrelated questions? Can they even ask me about my e-statement from the other bank? What does it have to do with you guys? And then he kind of defended whatever the staff had done, which I found it very kind of unusual and disappointed. I was really quite disappointed. And then I said, so what is the next process? Are you going to send this money or what? What am I going? I'm running short of time. And then anyway, he said that he will check into it and get back to me the day after. And then the day after, he calls me and he says that, you know what, unfortunately, 1 week has passed. And because of that, the whole transaction has been canceled. I said, are you serious? I'm in a hurry. I want to send this money. But no, so you can start all over. I said, is that your recommendation? For me to start all over, go to the same process, which most likely is going to happen to the same result. Anyway, it was a very stressful because time and, I made this relatively short, but, and I was really disappointed because I have had some other dealing with the bank with some other banks that it was very frustrating. So what I did, I said, you know what, I'm going to sue you guys. And I believe that you may not believe me, but I have done this in the past. And hopefully it will be a lesson. What I did the day after that, I went to another bank that I had. Anyway, the good news was that I had some money sitting there. It was a bigger amount, and I didn't have to transfer the money because that wouldn't work. It would be a 5 day sport. So I sent the money through them, and believe it or not, it took 25 minutes. The transaction was done. The same day the money was sent, I got an email in the middle of the night because it was the morning on the other side saying that they had received the money. The exchange office, they said they received money and they released the money to the government of Dubai, which the money was supposed to go. So it was done that way. But when I asked that, can you explain? I'm really concerned about this. This is not how it should be. So they sent me a letter, which I will try to find it and, make a copy of it, to have it attached to this video, that it was written really well, 2 page, very professional written, meaning and answering nothing, absolutely nothing, saying nothing, but it was written really well. You should have a PhD to write so many sentences and say absolutely nothing. It was just amazing. Anyways, so this is what happened. And because of that, I said, no, I'm going to do this because I'm going to sue you because really should, be held accountable. And one thing that really annoyed me the most, it was just that they didn't take any responsibility and they kept, supporting what the staff had done. And they kept asking, why do you send the money to Dubai? Which I had answered several times. I'm sending it because I purchased this house. And then they just kept asking the same, which I told the guy, I said, if you're asking for me to provide you with a different answer, let's saying I'm sending this to a terrorist organization in Dubai, to Al Qaeda or something, I'm not going to give you that answer. I'm not that stupid. If you have that concern, you should send RCMP to my door. It was a very, anyway, frustrating deal. Again, if somebody just listens to this, may think that, okay, nothing happened. You could send your money, so what? The issue is not that. The issue is them making a mistake, not taking any responsibility, me going through a stress over 1 week and not being sure that if the money gets sent or not, which at the end it didn't, and I could have been, penalized for different reasons because this was the contract that I had, with the seller basically. But anyway, so this is what happened. But I should maybe explain that I have had some other previous experiences with the banks. It's not just with the banks, to be honest. It's with some of the organizations that are bigger and they do whatever they want to, and they think that they can get away with it. For example, another example was several years ago when I purchased my business building. and I needed money. And I asked for a line of credit. And then when I asked for the line of credit against another thing that I had, the guy from the bank, and I had two options very clearly. And then one of the guys, from the bank that came, he overpromised and definitely underdelivered. And I was very clear with him too that, look, I'm in a hurry. Can you do this within 2 months? He said, oh, yeah, yeah, no worries. It will be done very quick. I have done this, several times and easy. And because they had offered me a better deal than the other bank, the other guy actually has said that no, might take a bit more. We will do our best, but it might take a bit longer. But anyway, so they offered me a better deal. I said, okay. But when the process started, they started asking so many questions. They needed so many documents. And the process took more than, I think, 4 or 5 months, which by this time I needed money and I was in debt, which I had to actually tell some of the contractors, which I was basically using the money to pay them. I had to say that, unfortunately, I don't have that money because I was supposed to get it. Of course, they understood and they were pretty good. In reality, they couldn't do much anything. You can't get blood out of a stone. So that was the situation. But it took a long time to get that. So I made a complaint again about that one, but really they did not take it that seriously. Then I said, you know what? I'm going to make a formal complaint. So I have done this in the past. And to make the story short, I wanted to make a formal complaint to somebody, further higher up, but they accepted and they waived some of the costs. They reimbursed me for some of stuff, which became about $2,500, which was, I said, you know what, as long as you learn a lesson. Of course, when I'm talking about this, maybe when you guys are listening, you may think that, you know what, oh my God, he's a difficult person to deal with. To be honest, no, that's not the case. I have had a lot of dealing with different contractors, with a lot of different people, and most of the time they have been very good. Most of the time they have become friends. At any time, if I need their services, they will be more than happy, to do that, and they have done it. But I'm talking about a few bad cases that it has happened. But unfortunately, those dealings has normally been with the bigger companies, not the small guys. And I think one of the reasons is that the staff or the rule, they think that they can get away with it. I think that has been the reason. The small guys normally, in my experience, they have been more cooperative and they understand where you're coming from. And it has been actually most of the time the dealings have been more pleasant than anything else. But anyway, so this bank, it was another scenario. One more case that I had was, again, years ago, I had to, the bank randomly called me. There was this lady called me from the bank. And then when she called, she said that a mortgage that I was paying years ago for a house that I had, that they said one of them has not gone through, which I couldn't understand. Anyway, she didn't explain it very well. I was at work, I was busy. I said, what shall I do? She said that they would have to deduct that from my account at the time, that there was money there, a little enough for that, which I said, okay, but I would like to know what happened. So she debited my account and got the problem solved. But then afterwards, I called her back that, would you please, give me a call and tell me what happened? I don't know. Maybe I'm paying, twice, two mortgages, instead of one, for 1 month. But she didn't call me back. Then a week passed. I called her for the second time. Again, did not call me back. Then the third time, I have a general rule that I will make 2 phone calls. Then the third time, I will just count it for them. I sent her an email. I said, this is the third time that I'm sending you, I'm leaving you a message. And if you do not respond after this, I will charge you for my time. And I told her how much is my hourly rate. I said, the same way that you get paid for not doing your job, I have to get paid for my time. And again, she did not respond. So what did I do? After that, I sent an email to her. I found out who her boss was, and I calculated the hours that I had spent on that for typing the email and everything. And anyway, I sent that to them. When I sent that, then she picked up the phone and called me. I said, why should it take you so long to call me back? And this time, this process didn't happen on every day, because I know sometimes when I talk about this, some people think that, oh, do you think you're special? You want a quick answer? No. I gave her 1 week, and then another week, and then another 2 weeks. What shall I do? But she was not calling back. And to be honest, the first time when she called me, she was a kind of more of a bully, kind of, she came across a bit wrong, which I didn't appreciate that. I think she wanted just to scare me somehow to make to resolve the issue, which anyway, I said, okay, you can go, debit my account. But anyway, by this time, and then she says that, you know what, if you want, you can come to my office, the lady, after I had sent that email, and then I can explain that to you. I said, you know what, I can definitely come to your office, but for that, I will charge you extra for my time, for my traveling time too. Probably it would be cheaper if you come to my office. And if the explanation, because she started to explain something to me, I said, if the explanation, this is what you have, to be honest, it's not satisfying. And anyway, so at the end, it took a bit extra time. There was then another lady, which I believe her was her boss. She went through some stuff and anyway explained, sent some of the information, which made absolute sense that what had happened. I didn't know that when bank gives you a mortgage, really they are getting it from somebody else. And anyway, I have forgotten how the whole damn thing worked. But the moral of the story is this, that, sometimes I have seen that, especially with some, bigger companies, and it doesn't matter who, you know, they think that they can get away with this stuff. And I do this normally. So I have these principles that I have said in some other podcasts. I say, I don't kiss ass because I need to. I don't kick ass because I can. I do it because it's right. So any of these things that I have done essentially has been because I believe that it's the right thing to do. I believe, I mean, it's not just what I believe. They say change happens for one of these four main reasons. One is punishment, one is reward, the other one is social norm, which is the most common, and the other one is education. And really, I tried all of those avenues. I tried to, be reasonable and ask, tell me what's going on. But unfortunately, that doesn't work. So because of that, I had to resort to the last, option which I had. Let's call it punishment. That I want to make sure that I hold them responsible. So when I say in this process, the people who are doing it, often they are very good people, but they perform terribly, obviously. And I'm not sure where it comes from. It is because they think they are in position of power. I'm not making that call. There can be a lot of different reasons. All I know, they should do a job that they didn't do. And they think their time should get paid. My time should not. And they can waste my time. I understand mistakes happen. We all make mistakes. But if it is ignorance that happens frequently, if you don't accept, to come and say that, oh, come clean, you know what, I'm sorry, I made a mistake, I would be just fine with that. Honestly, you would. I would be, absolutely fine with that. But they never did that. It was every time they tried to cover their back and, they simply ignored what my concern. And that was the reason, that has been the reason that every time, I have gone through this process. And when I say this, I'm going to now, turn the table and myself. Again, I'm a physical therapist by profession. I own my own practice. And it has happened that we have made mistakes. I have had one case, for example, that one client was waiting for too long. And actually, he wrote us a negative review. If somebody interested, they can go and see my response to it. And if you don't know where I work, it is called Alpha Center, and alphacenter.ca is the website. You can check that, the reviews. We have really good reviews for the most part, but we have made mistakes too, for sure. And, and to be honest, I went and apologized, that I'm sorry, this is not what our normal practice is. And to be honest, I would be offended too, if somebody keeps me waiting and waste my time. I would do the same thing, but I took responsibility. We have had some other negative reviews over time, two more that I do remember, and I took responsibility for it. And I actually called, for example, for both of them, actually, I called the person and apologized for the mistake was from us. And believe it or not, those both exactly they removed the reviews. Because of that, you will not see them if you go, to check our reviews. So we all make mistakes, but it is just that what you do with it. Are you gonna be accountable, accept the accountability, or are you gonna do something to make it better? And sometimes those complaints and those kind of things, to be honest, are a very good thing for all of us. For myself, I can say for sure. Sometimes we lose track. We think that we can get away with this, or just we don't pay attention that what's happening to the other party. For myself, it has happened, and then people have brought up their concern. To be honest, it has worked towards in my favor. That I think I have become a better person, and that is why if you go and check our reviews now, you will see they're really amazing because we really do a good job. We do our best. Uh, does it happen that people maybe, for example, they have to sit for a bit? Yes, but not that much. And we do our best. Unless something really happens, complete out of our control, then we can't do much about that one. And I'm just fine with that. But again, it becomes very annoying when you see the other party doesn't care. They don't take responsibility. They think they can get away with it. I don't know. I'm not going to now elaborate that why the reasoning is. But, when I don't see a, a change, they don't accept it, and they try to brush you off, then, I said, then I will take it further. And I have heard this thing too. So do you think by doing this, you will just change the whole bank system? You know what? The answer is no. I just do what is right to the best abilities that I have. What's going to happen next? I don't know. Even with this bank that I'm talking about, that I have been their customer for 26 years or 27 years from the very inception of the bank almost that they started. Um, Even with this one, we are going to go to court. Do I know what the outcome is going to be? I don't know. I have hired a lawyer. I have spent money on that. I'm absolutely fine with it. Am I going to recoup my money? Am I going to win? Am I going to lose? I have no idea. And to be honest, I'm not too worried about that. The very main reason that I do this, because I think it's the right thing to do. And somebody might prove me wrong, but I think that's a different thing. As far as I believe I'm doing the right thing to this state, I believe I'm doing the right thing. I encourage people to do this, that others to do the same. If we do hold people responsible and accountable for their wrongdoings, uh, we may not run into this kind of things as much. The same way that myself, I have made mistakes. People have told me, and I have fixed most of them. And right now, don't have too many wrongdoings anymore. I'm kidding. Again, I will make mistakes, and I would be more than happy that, if somebody notices that, to bring it up. That's one of the best way. That is how we improve. But anyway, so this is the gist of it. I'm doing it because it's the right thing. And I have said it in the past too. Normally, when I do something, I'm really not too worried about the consequences. The consequences, we might guess them within one generation, two generation or something, but we will never know the other consequence that's going to happen. So I'm never ever, I would say never ever, but most of the time, I do not worry about the consequences, especially if the immediate consequences are not going to be catastrophic. If it's not that, I take the hit. I'm absolutely fine. So am I going to win or not? I don't know. I will update you once the issue has been resolved. And again, I just do the right thing. And again, I encourage everybody to do that. And if somebody sees again personally, as or professionally, we make mistakes, they believe that, please bring it up. If the person doesn't take accountability, if they don't have a good reasoning to explain that, and they continue doing the same, then I would say punishment potentially has the place for it. And that I would not have been doing that. I would not have taken that course, to take them to court or be that harsh or those kind of things. I would not have done that if they had really accepted and they would say, okay, we will check into it to find out what the problems and what the solution is. Anyway, I hope you guys find this logical and not emotional. And I have had a lot of people that they actually have been questioning me that it's a wrong thing to do. I don't think so. I think it's a very actually honorable thing that I'm doing, and I'm very proud of what I'm doing. I think it's the right thing, and I hope that more people do the same thing towards anybody who intentionally makes mistakes and thinks can get away with it. If we do these kind of things, people will be a bit more accountable for their actions, and they would see that. And it's good. Again, it's good. People that would realize that if, for example, somebody comes and complains to them, if really they make sense. I'm not saying necessarily every complaint is a legitimate thing, and we should act on it, not at all. But if we realize that we have made a mistake, then there is an issue. And one of the arguments that I have with this bank is because I have heard again this one, some people they said, but it is the rules and regulations, what, or the rule. Why the other bank did it within one day? I don't accept that. No, the other bank did it in one day. The same bank that they didn't do it. 4 months prior, I had sent money through them, which was sent. Again, it was a little bit slow, but it happened. But the seventh time, what happened, which actually when I was speaking with the guy that I raised my company, I said, did your rule change within the past 4 months? Because 4 months ago, I did the exact same thing and it went through. What happened? And one of the things that he said, if you want to, I can send you the rules and regulation around this, and you can read it for yourself. I said, you're not going to do that to me. I said, I'm not responsible to finding your flaws. You're responsible to find your flaws and you go fix them. All I know is this. Up to 4 months ago, I did this, the same process, it worked. 4 months after it has been done for 6 times over 3 years, all of a sudden things change. It is your response to find out. And normally I say this, I'm a very practical, I take pride in this, to be very practical and functional. And what do I mean? Again, I say I'm a physical therapist. You come to me with your knee problem and make your knee worse. And then you ask me what happened. Then if I go give you the anatomy, the physiology, the biomechanic, yes, I can make shit up, or say stuff that you don't know. If you're not in this field, you would not know. Why should you know? Then you can say, I don't care about all that. You made my knee worse. That's all it happened. So if in that case, most likely I would be a bad physio. And sometimes we want to have had patients that, for example, I do something, they want really a lot of explanation. I say, look, you want to get better, I make you better. Do not challenge me on the how part of it. I explain some part of it, don't take me wrong. But if somebody, but this can do this, you know what? Let's not go into details as much. You want the reality, you want to get better, I make you better, and it happens. Again, if anybody has any, question about that one, you can go check my reviews. I do a pretty good job, I suppose. I mean, I do. And anyway, so at the end of the day, again, when sometimes it's like politicians or anybody else, in order to confuse the person, they go into details. When they know that I don't know your banking system, yes, you can confuse me. I don't care about that. What I care about, it took 1 week, you did not transfer my money. I went to the other bank, within 1 day, they transferred it. That's all I know. Then most likely, not 100%, but most likely, you don't do your job. There is something wrong with you. You go figure out what's the problem with you. It's not my responsibility. Anyway, I hope that you find this type of argument that I make, reasonable. And I would be more than happy actually to hear that what you have to say. That do you think, is this the right thing that I did? Or maybe I should let them get away with it. And what would happen if we all do the same thing that I do, not just towards the bank, not just towards others, but others do it towards us? What will happen? Because when I'm saying this, I would be more than happy to see if somebody has any complaint against me, if I make a mistake, to bring it up. Not to bring it up from the very get-go, I'm going to fight you or something. No. To bring it up and see if I take responsibility. If not, then definitely you should take it to the next level. I really believe that. And that way, we will, again, I think we will end up with a much better society. And the number of the conflicts and this kind of poor customer service, that there are good people in the same bank, the same people that they provide a bad customer service, which you and I can be one of them. Often they're good people, but they do bad behaviors, they perform bad behaviors, which is a kind of stemming from, I don't know, environment. I don't want to get into that part of it, but for whatever reason, there are good people doing bad jobs. But by doing this, hopefully, we will encourage people, and the kind of it needs be by force to do a better job. Anyway, hope that you enjoyed this and find it educational. Again, I would love to hear more, to see what you guys think about this. If you can make it as a comment, that would be awesome. And again, at the end of the day, life is simple. We make it complicated. Thank you all.